Hello, hello, welcome. On today's Action Cast, we have a subject that is near and dear to all of us because this is about the conversation and how to nurture those relationships with doctor's office and medical practitioners in general. We are serving a clientele that is a huge part of their life. That is where they live. Like that's so much of what we do is focused around supporting that role as they age and as their needs increase. And yet as an industry, we struggle with that relationship with medical practitioners. We struggle with it being a true partnership. We struggle with presenting ourselves in a way that where we show the asset we are. And so just across the board, it's a conversation that needs to happen. And that is the conversation that we are going to have today on ActionCast. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Here we are. This is the conversation that is going to change agencies today. And I could say that about any Action Cast because anytime we have someone, we have a guest, they have wisdom, they have a certain shared experience. But today's conversation is that back of the mind question that as an agency owner, you wonder, and it's hard. You don't really ask your peers because it's a little embarrassing to be like, I don't know what to say at a doctor's. I don't know. So it's kind of intimidating in general because you don't even really know how to approach it. So that's a conversation we're having today. And in my opinion, we have the best person we could bring in for that conversation. And it is Kelly. Kelly, welcome, and tell us just a little bit about yourself to get started.
Thanks, Katie. I'm excited to be here. My name's Kelly Adams. I have been the owner of Beyond Home Care since 2017. Excuse me. And so going on a little over 8.5 years. I'm an independent, so I'm not a franchise. I started bootstrapped from the grounds up. And I have a truly team-led agency, so I'm not in the day-to-day operations. I have an amazing operator, Kirsten Robinson. And if you ever see her in the chat in Home Care Ops, or ask her questions because she's fantastic.
Absolutely. And I will say that a big part of this is the conversation behind the conversation that we're not having today, but part of being a team-led agency is having those people that maybe there's experiences that you've learned, you have connections that I'm sure we'll talk about within industries and things like that they didn't come from. We are not innately born with knowledge and skill sets. Those things are learned and they're earned as we go through time. So this conversation isn't meant to be hard to achieve. It's not meant to be far out for, only agencies that have reached 5 million or above can present themselves in one way, or agencies that have this census of clients can do this. This is something that if you have one client and you have one needs-based person that has relationships with these medical agencies, it's meant for you. This is meant to be where you're at in your agency. And so this conversation is good for no matter what your agency size. So I want to start with that because sometimes when you have these conversations, we distance ourselves from the subject because it's an intimidating, that sounds a little too big. That sounds like they have paid marketers. That sounds like that.
No.
And that's not true. And as a matter of fact, and I'm sure you'll speak to this, sometimes that's almost counterproductive to some of these conversations. So let's talk about where you feel like home care as an industry stands in relationship to the relationships they have with these medical offices, with all of the solutions that their clients are actively, taking part in each day. Where do we stand as an industry in that?
Where do we stand? So we stand in a place where we don't feel like we are healthcare. And I think that's probably the biggest conversation that we need to have because we're not medicine. There's a difference. We are healthcare. I don't know about you guys, but I'm sure not running the Babysitters Club over here. I could pay any, teenager cash to make sure my kids are alive at the end of the day. And that's what a sitter does. That's not what we do.
That's so good.
And I think that there is a conversation that needs to be had with owners because it comes from owner down to agency. It can't just be the owner. I'm not in the day to day, but I guarantee you my staff understands that they have heard me, they hear me say things enough, and they now have that ownership. We talk a lot about, getting invited to the table, taking your seat at the table. I'm gonna just tell you, you just need to bring your chair, right? Nicole and I joked once about how we're gonna bring a camping chair, and we're just gonna scoot some folks aside and get right in there. I mean, that's the first part of it. I think the other part is that there's this misconception that because we're not healthcare or because we're not medicine, we don't understand the ins and outs, and that's true. For most people, they did not come from a healthcare background. I did not come from a healthcare background. My husband is a physician, but it doesn't work like, osmosis. Like, it's just, I'm not in his vicinity, and so I understand medicine. I always think it's funny when someone asks me a medical question, and I'm like, my degree are.
Right.
You don't want to know how I think that you should treat shingles. But because of that, we are intimidated, and we think that, well, we don't know medicine, we don't know healthcare, so we can't be part of that conversation. And that is probably one of the biggest things that's holding you back. I'm in small town Alabama, guys. My agency's not huge. But in any of the surrounding counties, and honestly, even, from a national level at this point, I get asked about, you know, my background in this because I've just created a name for myself. I don't need to be the one that knows everything, but I know who to call, right? I surround myself with the people. I've made those relationships. And so I think that is, you don't need to know medicine, but you do need to have your people. So do we want to talk about how we do that?
Yes, absolutely. And I will say, like, for everybody listening, that part that she just said, what was that, like 5 minutes? You should rewind that when this replay is up, because there's so much innate wisdom in that. Like, when you have these kinds of conversations, I just want to encourage everybody as we're going forward, there's wisdom that people will give just with their lived experience, that maybe that's not exactly but when you said we are in healthcare, we are just not in medicine, that is a perspective shift that
That's a mindset.
It's an absolute mindset shift to, there are a lot of owners out there that maybe are running fairly good size agencies. And you and I have experience working together in action leaders, and in, like, we have a lot of experience with just dealing with people. And I can tell you, this isn't just the startups challenge. This is a challenge that home care owners across the board, if they have come in, and especially if this is their first business venture and they're just not business people that purchased a home care, they have other challenges that we deal with. But one of the challenges that people that started organic agencies or even franchises where they had that zeal and they went into it, is that perspective shift of, you absolutely are a partner in care. And it could be argued you're one of the most crucial and critical partners in care, because you make the most daily connection with these clients. So absolutely continue the conversation. I just wanted to kind of give everybody a red flag of, like, listen and lean into this, because there's a lot of wisdom that is happening here. So go ahead.
Yeah, I could talk for days, Katie, and I'm not going to get too far in the weeds because I know that this is like, a surface. We want to take some tactical things away, but I do think it's just important from an industry standpoint. You may be running a $5 million agency because you're in an area that is huge, and you've got referrals and stuff coming in out your, or phone calls out. Just because of that, or you may be in California. I'm not going to throw California under the bus, but one of the most regulated states, and you think, oh, well, I have it because I'm regulated. I'm going to tell you, you don't. If you don't understand where we fit in and where our value is, then you're doing a disservice, I'm sorry, to the entire industry. We are only as strong as our weakest link. Because when you look at it, we all are compared to the worst agency down the block because we all do home care, right?
Right.
But that, unfortunately, that is, we need to embrace that, and we need to come together and teach one another and educate and work as a team. When we look at the partnerships, for one, you're a member of an interdisciplinary team. Okay. That means that they're in any seniors realm, there's lots of people. There's the family caregiver, there's the physician, there's the home care, there's, I don't know, the pharmacist, there's all these people. You have a seat there. Most of those interdisciplinary teams, they don't include a social worker. And that is the seat probably that we can fit into, because that job is to bridge gaps. That
Right.
job is to bring in resources. That job is to take care of the psychosocial aspects of the client and not just the medicine. Okay.
Mhm.
And I think that part is key. If we can start thinking about that. Why you're not getting doctor referrals is because you are trying to get in the door like everybody else. And I'm just going to tell you that the doctors that you probably need to get into, they're going to be your PCPs and your specialists that deal in aging care. They have such a finite amount of time to work with that patient. They have charting they have to do, and they have messages that they have to return. My husband checks his messages in the morning before he goes to work, and he can spend 2 hours responding to portal messages and refills that he doesn't get paid for. Okay. So understanding that their time is so finite. And yes, it's great that you are a home care owner and that you can support a client in their home but the reality is that is just not number one on their list when they're talking to a client or a patient about their cardiology or so what I like to do is look at it from a partnership standpoint. Where do I best fit in there? The likelihood that I best fit in is with home health, because any senior who needs home health is going to also probably need home care. I'm going to throw it out and say any senior that needs home care needs home health. So when we talk about partnerships, partnership implies reciprocity. The number of home care owners and marketers that I ask, hey, so who do you refer to? Who is your number one referral? It gets quiet. What do you mean? Who do I refer to? I don't, I'm not a doctor's office. I can't write orders. That's not what I'm asking. I'm asking, where's your partnership? I spoke to a friend who's an aging life care manager, and she has a really large practice. And she said, home care owners come in all the time and they want to tell me like how they can support the client and stuff, but they never send me any referrals. It's so one-sided. And I'm not saying that everything has to be, both ways, but how many people do you come in contact with that you're like, they could use Meals on Wheels.
Mhm.
They could use an attorney to go through, living will options, power of attorneys. And if you're not asking those questions, then you don't understand how it all works together. So I think that's probably key is if you want to be a partner, then you have to show partnership.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I want to nominate you to do a curriculum called the ecosystem of home care. like, like sitting here, my brain is like spinning, but that is awesome. And I will say what you
I'm
said.
so passionate about this.
Well,
like so much more than even home care. Like
that's the thing. Like you just said, so much more than even home care, because you're invested in the ecosystem itself, not
yes.
just what you get out of it, like your checks from your check. Like, no, like you are invested in the system itself. And that's a blessing to be able to have that perspective. And it's not, and when I say have, I mean you've invested in learning and cultivating in your life, in your work, in your career, in the chosen things you've done. You have invested in learning outside of just what immediately benefits you, like getting more
Yes.
billable hours, which is important. I'm not trying to downplay the importance of that,
But that's
but
transactional.
understanding that. Go ahead.
That's transactional. What
Right.
works good for me today is transactional.
Right.
You have to look at the bigger picture. And you're right. I mean, Katie, when I first got into this, I learned real fast. I had a 24-hour skilled case that bedbound, full aphasia from a stroke. I was way out of my depth. I'm nodding, and yeah, I understand all those big medical words. Absolutely. I learned real fast that I'm out of my depth. I don't need to be the doctor. I don't need to be the home health, but I do need to understand so that we are supporting
Mm-hmm.
those positions. So number one, what I did is I got real curious. And that's if I could tell you anything when you leave here, be curious. Leave room to be wrong, ask questions. So there was a girl that I knew that I really respected in one of our local home health agencies, and she'd been a nurse for like 25 years. And so I just called her and I was like, hey, so you get this, you understand. Um, I just took on this client. You guys are going to be the home health providers for it. There are things that we need to do to support you that I don't know 100% that I'm comfortable with. Can we talk about it? That's a partnership,
Mm-hmm.
right? I'm leaning in on the skill level of
Right.
home health. Do I have nurses on staff that do assessments? Sure, absolutely. How does that benefit me if I'm going to those nurses and asking questions when I really need to lean on the ones who are working with the physicians? And
Right.
that's how you get to the doctors, okay?
Right.
If you're utilizing your PRN nurses or, for that skilled side to understand that medical side, then that's a huge waste. There's an entire industry created around Medicare that they get to bill for Medicare. We don't get to do that yet, right?
Mm-hmm.
But because of that, that's where your interdisciplinary team comes in. The doctor, the home health, the DME, the pharmacy, all of that is Medicare supported.
Mm-hmm.
So you need to understand that side of it so that you can add value. Understand that it's really important for that home health not to have a readmission into the hospital after they take on that client. They
Mm-hmm.
need 30 days. They need 30 days without that readmission. So if I've got a stroke patient who just came out and I need to watch, I'm gonna post it in the home if home health hasn't done it. I'm gonna post the signs of a stroke. I'm gonna post that this client has left side weakness and that she needs to be supported here. I'm gonna make sure that my people understand that. That's medicine, but also I need to educate on that and not expect the client to do it, and not expect home health to call me to do it.
That's so good. That's
I
so
need
good.
to call, I need to make that, I need to say, hey, home health, we don't understand. We've not ever taken on XYZ client. Can you educate my caregivers? That's what they do.
Right. Well, and that's the thing. I feel like as a culture, we had this whole terrible, whatever, I can't even think of the decade, but like the whole fake it till you make it, like mentality of
And now,
like
yeah, for a little
just,
bit.
and it's like, yeah, exactly. There's moments when you need to present your best self, or you can argue points of it. Absolutely, you
Sure.
don't need to be a jellyfish, but at the same time, that whole leaning in when, wait a minute, there's something I didn't understand. Let me clarify this. And I used to have a boss who, and this is like back in the early days, but I used to have a boss who he was crazy good at what he did. He was nationally known for it and stuff like that. And we would come along and his staff would try and help him. And he had this statement, and we just dreaded hearing it. But he used to say, just don't make it harder for me. Just don't make it harder for me. And it's because we were operating out of his zone of genius so much that in trying to help, we were actually unintentionally making things harder for him very often. And that's what it makes me think of when you're talking about dealing with home health. They're coming from the mindset of how often do they come in and they're frustrated because home care before has inadvertently done something that makes it harder for them. So if we approach this from the standpoint of how do I not make your job harder? How do I work as, and not just use the term partners in care, but be that, like be
Yes.
that, provide that for them. And like, you're not on the case the other parts of the time, the 24 hours a day. We are. How do I not make your job harder? And approach it from that standpoint. That's a giving, like you said, that's a transactional relationship. And I guarantee you, if you become that true partners in care to those, they will want you on every case they have. Like that,
Every
that is
case.
so
Because you're
indispensable.
making their job easier. They get reimbursed and paid based on those readmissions. Okay. And that's what people need to understand is your doctors, they get reimbursed and paid based on how they bill and their RVUs. And so we don't have to get into all of what that means, but they need it to be easy. Right. So even with my husband, who is family practice and is a VA credentialed doctor, had to teach the man what the CCN network was for VA, how to fill out the form, what it looked like. And so my mind, I'm thinking, we're married. What do you mean you don't know? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm speechless, right? That makes me think, oh, if he doesn't get it, half of them don't.
Right.
How can I make it as easy as possible? Right. And so I have the form done, ready to send. Recently realized we changed phone companies at the office. And so we get text messages now, which is kind of cool, right? New, fancy. The easiest way to get a referral, text me the phone number and the name.
Yeah.
And that's what he does now.
That is how we have like adapted as a culture. Is it's almost rude if somebody calls you now. Like that sounds
but
crazy.
it's easy for him. It's
Yeah.
easy for that physician, or it's easy for that nurse. That's what it comes down to. His nurse takes a picture of the little sticker that goes on the patient's folder thing, and she says to the patient first, "Hey, is it okay if I have Beyond Home Care reach out? They're credentialed with the VA and they can get you set up. Let's just make it easy." Now, did it take me a little while to get in to talk to that office and understand, those aspects? Sure. But the way that I did it, I made friends at the home health first so that I was their partner. I kept then I look and see, so who's the primary care physician of that client? I make sure that I'm faxing over because most of them are still doing fax. Guys, it's HIPAA compliant. They can't do, it is just what it is right now. Fax over a letter. Hey, just wanted to let you know we share a mutual patient, Miss Smith. We started home care with her on this date. I'll reach out every now and then and kind of let you know what's going on. If I have an issue, okay, and this happens all the time, I have a client who all of a sudden is starting to she's acting different, right? She's been with us for a while and she doesn't have dementia, but all of a sudden she's getting confused. She's maybe even having some hallucinations. We know, or we should know, that UTIs in older people very often present as dementia. Dementia doesn't come on like that. So if you have a change in cognition for a person, that is a signal that there's something happening. Instead of calling the family first and saying, "Hey, just want to make sure you're aware," I'm going to call the doctor. I call the doctor's office, or I'll call the home health and say, "Hey, so we're noticing this. And is there any chance I can get a urine culture to make sure that this client doesn't have a UTI?" I want to be proactive. And then I'm going to follow up with the family and be like, "Hey, just want you to know that I went ahead and contacted the doctor's office just to make sure." And I've had people ask me before, "Well, don't you feel like that's an overstep?" Okay, if I need to apologize for taking care of your family member, I will.
Right.
I'm going to have the audacity to do that. Okay. My job is to keep people safe. And so that's what I'm going to do. That's a value add. That's how I'm a true partner. That's how I'm not transactional.
That's so
I know
good.
my value, and I'm going to make sure that And it's not rocket science. It's little things, but you just need to stay open and be that support. That's what people
Mhm.
need. They need support and advocacy right now more than ever. People are drowning in healthcare.
Exactly. And the thing about it is so often, and this is, I mean, we all have our little soapboxes we could stand on, but so often we don't want to be considered sitter services, but then we view ourselves as
Like
a
a
sitter
sitter.
service, and we only do those things. And like you're talking about, would the family get upset? Not if there's clearly stated when you're onboarding, and we watch out for the needs of the client. And if we notice anything, we will let the physicians know. We will absolutely take it. Like that can all be one sentence, and it sets clear expectations. And then when you do come to them and say, hey, Mrs. Jones had this issue, you're coming to them with a solution, not a problem. That they're the average family member that has home care is 200 lives 280 something 87 I think miles away from their aging parent. That's a big reason that home care is playing a role here. So if they're 300 miles away and you call and say your mom's acting like she has dementia, you just
What do
ruined
you
their
want me to
whole.
do?
Yeah, you just threw a grenade in their family. That's their mom you're talking about. And instead of just saying, hey, she had been acting a little funny, we called her medical practitioner, they ran a UTI, and sure enough, and just keeping you informed, this and this and this, you're presenting this as a solution, and not just, the neighbor across the street can tell them when their mom starts acting funny. That's not,
Right.
like, you have to bring a solution to the table other than, you know, being the canary in the coal mine. It didn't end well for the canary.
Yeah.
Canary. So, like we have to up level that a little bit. I love this, and I just want to remind everybody, there's just so much knowledge here. I'm still going back into you can be the social worker. That should be a whole thing. That should be a whole thing.
Well, and
I love this conversation.
yeah, I mean, this is, the education and advocacy side is definitely where my heart is at this point in my career, right? It hasn't always been there. And again, I didn't come from healthcare. So, I mean, I just ask questions. The internet is an amazing place, guys. YouTube, you can learn just about anything.
Yeah.
So, how did I learn about Medicare? I just ask questions. Learning about Medicaid and who qualifies and who doesn't, because that's important. I don't get to bill Medicaid in my state. That, they just don't, it's not important. But Medicaid pays for nursing homes, skilled nursing facilities in my state. And like most, they do a 5-year look back. And so it's important for me to be able to hear and understand what that looks like, so that when I'm talking to a client and they're like, oh, well, we're going to just pay somebody under the table, or they don't even have to say it. When you leave that assessment and you're feeling like, that's what they're about to do. I want to say, hey, so call us when you're ready. Just want to make sure that before we start, you start going down the Medicaid route for mom a nursing home, we need to make sure that finances over the last 5 years are set, and that really needs to come from an agency, or it needs to be documented. If you want to talk more about that, or I've got an attorney that I can point you in the right direction. The nursing home should have a Medicaid billing person that can talk to you about that and go into like the specifics. But that's a red flag for that person. And like, what do you mean I can't pay somebody under the table and still qualify for Medicaid skilled nursing? No, you can't. That's not how it works. So it's those little things that you're missing. I'm not saying that you don't have any, understanding of you can't bring value, but if you don't stay curious, if you don't understand where you fit into this, this healthcare world, then you're just missing out on an opportunity. And it's an opportunity that is only going to grow. I think that for most people, they got into this business not because they saw that 10,000 people turn 65 every day and this is going to be,
Mhm.
a gold mine of let me just stuff my pockets with cash. You got most everybody I've met in this industry, they came for a reason. There's a
Mhm.
why behind it, right? Expand your why, right? It's so much more now to me than it ever was my aunt and my grandmother. Now it's the fact that at the heart of it, I believe that we were never supposed to do life alone. We're supposed to be in a village. I'm part of your village. So let me take some of that load. Let me take, some of that burden. Let me know about the resources in the town so that when, I do sit down for an assessment or I am talking to a family, I'm like, hey, so did you know that instead of using a Hoyer lift, we could probably get him qualified for a Barton chair.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't know what a Barton chair is, please send me a message. I would love to introduce you to the most amazing piece of DME that I've ever used. I had a Parkinson's client able to go out in the sunshine until the day of his death because we had a Barton chair. He was completely non-mobile because we had a Barton chair and it will turn on a dime and it is comfortable and it's not a Hoyer lift. And, to be able to do that for someone at the end of their life, that's why I got into this.
That's awesome. And I think that it's healthy to see that you are absolutely passion driven, but passion does not mean that you are unable to see the realities of life. You're unable to see the realities of the medical climate that we're in.
Oh,
So
yeah.
passion doesn't have to deny every other fact or only be like run your business like a nonprofit. With as passionate as you are, you do not run your business like it's a nonprofit. You are the
Passion isn't
owner.
rosy colored glasses, right? It's
Yeah,
not like dumb positivity.
right, exactly. And
I
it's
mean, it can be, but you're gonna, you're not gonna be
cost
around
yourself
long.
a few million along the way. Like, yeah, like, and so it's important to see that. And okay, so to land the plane and to wrap it up, to make this applicable for every home care owner that is listening to this conversation. And I always try and put myself in the mind of that home care owner that sees every time you say something like, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god, I'm not doing that, I'm not doing that, like they see so much wrong with their, maybe their first, you notice your your mindset is skewed, and then maybe you're seeing how, man, I think the culture is wrong here, or we haven't developed this over here. So if you're that owner that feels overwhelmed by this conversation and isn't getting from this that I can do better tomorrow, it feels like this is too big of a hill to climb. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know the words to say. I would get lost 10 seconds into each answer. If you're that owner that feels overwhelmed just by the challenge of this conversation, what is that first step? What is that thing that they do tomorrow, today, to start getting them on the path where they truly become a partner in care for home health, for all these medical practices and stuff? What is that first step? And then that natural little line they should follow.
So the first step is admitting that you don't know everything, right? And to stay a lifetime learner. Where that takes you is look at your client roster right now. Okay. And if you don't have clients, if you're new, then you're at a great place because you haven't developed any bad habits and you can kind of start fresh. But find one client that is a little more complex, or even, find that client that has an illness or a chronic medical condition that you feel more comfortable with, and dig into that client. Figure out, okay, so is this client getting all the resources that are possibly available to them in this area? Does this client, we only see them 4 hours a day, 5 days a week. What are their medications, looking like? Could they benefit from going back to the doctor to do just a medication review? Have we had any illnesses lately? I said before, most every client that you have probably could benefit from home health. A client doesn't have home health right now, but they've got a med change, they've got a gait change, they've had a small fall. Those are little things that qualify them for home health. Find out who they've used before. If they haven't, then introduce them to a home health and say, hey, so Medicare pays for home health and we want to make sure to get everything we can for you. is it okay if I reach out to home health and say, like, let's get a referral just so we can kind of see what it looks like? Because having more eyes on this situation is always better. And if we can get Medicare to pay for something, like, let's get them to pay for it. Just find that one client, dig into that one client, research what that weird illness is, or, and then find out if they have home health. Reach out to the home health and say, hey, we share this client. I want to make sure that we're doing what we need to do. Can you get the nurse to call me and just so that I can make sure that my caregivers understand what we need to watch for when they're not there? Would it be helpful if we called to let you know if, hey, something is off? Have there been times where somebody has told me to go and kick rocks? Sure. That's life,
Mm-hmm.
I've definitely had opportunities before where we've called a home health agency and they've said, well, if we were concerned about that, we would call the doctor. And I'm like, great, good,
Right.
good for you. I'm still going to do my job, right? I'm still going to make sure that my clients are taken care of and that my family is supported. I think that just look for the above and beyond. And that's where you can, it's not about like, okay, I noticed that the living room needs to be picked up today, so I'm going to do that. That's great. But read the caregiver's notes. And if they say that, hey, Miss Smith hasn't eaten as well as she has in the last few days, find out why. Maybe her tooth is bothering her. Maybe she doesn't like what's being cooked. Maybe all of a sudden she can't taste it. There's so many things. I don't need to know the answer to it. I just need to ask the questions and then say, hey, so is that something we could fix? I'll tell you the other thing that I think is really interesting, Katie. I learned this just last year. I had a client. We were only there 4 hours a day, 5 days a week. Medications were such an issue because she wasn't taking her evening meds. And I can't promise, medication compliance if I'm not there in the evening. And so I'm just kind of going through this and talking to my husband about it. And he was like, that medicine doesn't have to be taken at night. I was like, what do you mean it doesn't have to be taken at night? Well, yeah, it's a one time a day. Actually, you could get this medication changed and have an extended release, and then she'd only have to take meds in the morning. I was like, shut up. I didn't even realize that was an option. So you got a client who's having to take meds 6 times a day. Some of them do. Is there a reason? Don't go question the doctor. That if you want to make an enemy, that's a really great way to do it. But just be curious about it. Is there a reason that we're taking them six times a day? The client's really struggling at night, and medication and compliance is so important for that doctor. Is there something we can change? That's
awesome.
Just ask questions. Be
that's so true.
Daughter that they don't have, or that they, just be curious. And if you don't know, or if you overstep, be the first one to say, I'm so sorry, I'm wrong. I think that's the other thing we tell clients when we first take them on. Hey, so I would love for this to go perfectly. It never does. But I'm going to tell you when we mess up. I'm going to come to you and tell you how I'm going to fix it. I'm going to be really honest and realistic with you. And that's what people want. There's so much fake in the world. They want people to be real.
That's so true. Authenticity. And I will say that is take one client this week and dig into the whole client's file, everything that and then next week learn about another client, and the next week learn about another client. And I mean, honestly, in a couple of months, you will be above and beyond what so many, any home. I mean, I would guarantee you will be beyond your local competition. You will,
hands down,
be so far ahead of that. And so just that one step, that one process. So that is such good wisdom. And I will say this, there is so much of this, like I said earlier, rewind it, rewatch it, listen to it, podcast style, because there is always stuff to be gleaned. There's always so much knowledge and wisdom in these conversations. And I truly thank you for the conversation today. I honestly feel like we could talk for 2 hours, and
We could.
both of us are just like, oh, no, don't do it. But it is a conversation that needs to be had in helping home care owners see themselves and their agencies as the true partner in care. And getting those referrals isn't the end goal. It's part of the process. It's just like a tree that produces apples. That tree isn't doing everything and all this and just struggling and making an apple. It's just a byproduct of being an apple tree. That's what happens. And as you grow a healthy and sustainable home care agency, gaining those clients will become a natural by the referral system. And I'm not saying it doesn't take intentional action. We're all about intentional action. But
that's intentional.
That's exactly my heart in this is you will be investing in the things that naturally bear fruit for your agency. And so what a wonderful conversation. I appreciate having it. And I want to remind everybody that if you're interested in any of our coaching programs, we have a ton that we offer for home care owners that are in different space. Just drop a comment in the links. We'll get back to you. We do try and go above and beyond to be the solution for home care owners that are providing the solution for others. So thank you so much for the conversation. And I look forward to seeing everyone again on ActionCast.